There was no personality there. It was like a zombie.
Look closely at the girl.
Let me tell you about the mother who refused to stop searching. Look at this girl, 17-year-old Annette Craver, staring directly into the camera. Most people see a regular teenager, but her mother sees something else. Something terrifying. There was nothing in her eyes, Mary Rose would later say. No personality there. It was like a zombie. Annette has just returned from California. She's married now, to a man more than twice her age, a man her mother barely knows. And within weeks, Annette will speak words that will haunt Mary Rose forever. I'm leaving Felix. I want a divorce. I'm going back to school. But Annette never makes it back to school. She disappears, completely, leaving behind only her inheritance, her house, and a mother who will spend the next 30 years doing something the police refuse to do. Hunt down the truth about Felix Vail, the man who turned out to be far more than just a controlling husband. This is the story of a serial killer who got away with murder for decades, and the mother who became the detective, the investigator, and the warrior who finally brought him down. September 8, 1981, Houston, Texas. The summer heat is fading, but inside the modest home of Mary Rose and her 15-year-old daughter Annette, the air is heavy with grief. They're having a yard sale, selling off the last belongings of Annette's father, who died in a car crash 2 years earlier. Mary Rose is busy with customers, trying to make ends meet, trying to plan their future. She doesn't notice the man on the motorcycle who pulls up. 40 years old, charming smile. He's just another customer. Or so she thinks. What Mary doesn't know is that this stranger, Felix Vail, has already befriended her daughter. Annette, brilliant enough to skip 2 grades, mature beyond her years, but still just a grieving teenager desperate for connection. Listen to Annette's voice on this tape she made for a friend. This is your friend, Annette. And here is your long-awaited tape. Hope you like it. She sounds normal, happy even. But Mary remembers something different. She spent a lot of time alone. She was always writing poetry and drawing, picked up the guitar. Isolation, that's what made Annette vulnerable. And Felix Vail knew exactly how to exploit it. Here's where the tragedy begins. Mary Rose has to make an impossible choice. She can't find work in Houston. An opportunity comes up in Oklahoma, but Annette is about to graduate high school. If they move now, it could derail everything Annette has worked for. So Mary makes a decision that will torment her for the rest of her life. She leaves Annette in the care of a friend. Just for a few months. Just until she can save enough money to bring her daughter to their new home. I regret that I left, Mary would say years later. And she even said to me in a letter, I feel like you abandoned me. While Mary is away, Felix makes his move. He visits Annette constantly. And when she graduates, he convinces her to go on a road trip with him. Mary works day and night in Oklahoma, saving every penny. Finally, she has enough. She buys a house, puts it in both their names. She calls to tell Annette the good news. They can finally be together again. But Annette is already gone. For an entire year, Mary tries desperately to reach her daughter. A few letters come, but never from the same place. Then, the phone call that every parent dreads. Annette is in California. She's 17 years old, and she wants permission to marry Felix Vail. I said, "Why don't you wait till you turn 18? This is a big mistake." She said, "I love him, Mom, and we'll go to Mexico and get married." Mary is trapped. Say no and lose Annette forever. Say yes and approve a marriage she knows is wrong. She makes her choice, hoping that approval will keep the door open between them. It's another decision that will haunt her. After the wedding, Annette's letters change. Felix has become controlling, violent. He forces her to undergo an illegal abortion. Finally, Annette finds the courage to leave. She returns to Mary Rose, moves into their new house together. But when Mary looks at her daughter, she sees someone else. That footage of Annette painting the downstairs, staring into the camera with those empty eyes. She was so confused when we were painting the downstairs and she looked into the camera with this intense look on her face like, "What do you want from me?" I think she was just overwhelmed with the way he had tried to control her and mess with her mind. Their reunion lasts only weeks. Felix starts calling, over and over, demanding to speak with Annette. Then one day, he simply walks into their house uninvited, goes straight to Annette's room, and emerges with her by his side. They approached me and said, "We want you out of the house." Mary Rose is forced to leave her own home, forced to abandon her daughter a second time. Annette turns 18, cashes in her inheritance from her father, and according to later reports, transfers everything to Felix. Her money, her house, her entire life. Then, she vanishes. When Mary Rose calls Felix, his explanation is chilling in its casualness. He told me that he put her on a bus and that she was going to Mexico. Mary immediately files a missing person report. The police go to Felix. And here's where the story takes its first dark turn. They believe him. They're charmed by him, just like Annette was, just like Mary Rose herself had been when she first met him at that yard sale. He convinced them that she had left on her own. So Mary waits, and waits. Christmas passes. Annette's birthday. Mother's Day. Mary sits by the phone, believing that maybe, just maybe, her daughter will call. I would stay close to a phone on those days in those early years, thinking this is it. This is the day she's gonna say, "Hi, Mom." But the call never comes. 7 years pass. Hundreds of letters to police, to the FBI, even to Felix himself. Nothing. No response. No investigation. No Annette. And that's when Mary Rose makes a decision that will change everything. If the police won't investigate Felix Vail, she will. She's not a detective. She's not a private investigator. She's a grieving mother with no training, no resources, and no idea what she's about to uncover. But she has something else. An iron will and absolutely nothing left to lose. This is the early days of the internet. Information is scarce, but Mary has managed to find one lead, Sue Jordan, Felix's sister. She drives halfway across the country to meet with her, and Sue tells her something that makes Mary's blood run cold. Felix had a wife who had drowned. A wife who drowned. Felix never mentioned being married before Annette. Mary immediately tracks down the family of this first wife, Mary Horton Vail. She finds Mary's younger brother, Will Horton, who was only 15 when his sister died in the Calcasieu River. A lady calls me and says, "You don't know me, but Felix Vail married my daughter and she's missing." And I said, "Oh, my God." Will doesn't spare any details. His sister Mary met Felix at McNeese State College in 1960. They married within 6 months, had a son named Bill the following year, but after the birth, Felix changed. He became controlling, told Mary he resented having a child. When she became pregnant again, Felix exploded in rage. Mary ran to her parents with her son, talking about leaving Felix. Her mother suggested she try to work things out first, so Mary went back. She died before they could have another conversation. According to Felix's story at the time, they left their son with Mary's mother and went fishing on a friend's boat. Felix saw a tree stump, maneuvered around it, and Mary fell overboard. He jumped in, couldn't find her, then swam back to shore to alert police. But here's the thing. To get back to shore, Felix had to pass multiple boats, several docks, and a fully staffed ice house. He never stopped to ask for help. Police arrested him immediately. 2 days later, Mary's body was recovered, and everything about it screamed murder. Her mouth was gagged with a scarf. The back of her head showed a massive wound, as if she'd been hit with something heavy. The sleeves of her college sweater were soaked in blood. Every detective on scene believed it was murder. And then the coroner made a ruling that let Felix walk free. But wait, there's something else. Someone else. Another woman who disappeared. And what Mary Rose is about to learn will reveal that Felix Vail isn't just a killer. He's a serial killer. The coroner ruled Mary Horton's death an accidental drowning. Despite the gag, despite the head wound, despite the blood, as a prosecutor, how'd I prosecute a murder case when the coroner says it's not a murder? So they really had to let him go, a Louisiana prosecutor would later explain. Will Horton's mother was destroyed. Will himself was left with a hole that never healed. And Felix Vail walked free. But Will tells Mary Rose something else. Since 1975, he's been receiving calls from people looking for another woman. Sharon Hensley, Felix's girlfriend after Mary, also disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Her mother called for years wondering if anyone had seen Sharon. When she told me that, my ears perked up. I thought, oh my gosh, now I've got something to work with. Mary Rose hits the road again, this time to Bismarck, North Dakota, to meet Sharon's brother, Brian Hensley. My fondest memories of my sister, Sharon, are just the sunshine and beads, and a lot of people described her as a free spirit. Sharon was 21 when she met Felix in California. By then, Felix had adopted the hippie lifestyle. He'd become a wandering preacher, the head of his own personal cult. He had a silver tongue and told Sharon exactly what she wanted to hear. They were living from vineyard to vineyard, living on grapes and kind of freewheeling around. But Felix's drug use escalated. His violence toward Sharon increased. Brian believes his sister stayed with Felix out of fear. Sharon visited her family one last time before planning to leave for South America with Felix. When she called her mother to say goodbye, Felix was likely right there, listening. But Sharon's mother knew something was wrong. When my mom got off the phone, she told my dad, "Sharon's in deep trouble. She's crying out for help." Then came a letter from Felix claiming Sharon had left him to sail to Australia with strangers they'd met in Florida. The Hensleys weren't fooled. They filed a missing person report. The police didn't investigate for over a year. The letter that we received from Felix was just bizarre. I remember plainly, clearly, just like, "Oh my God, this is such BS." Mary Rose knows she needs more. She decides to track down Felix's son, Bill Vail, the boy who was forced to travel with his drug-addicted father for years. The boy who finally ran away at age 8. She finds him in Kansas. Bill is an adult now, with a family of his own. And he's terrified of his father. Bill Vail was very open. He was very kind to me, compassionate. He was a good man, and I realized he was petrified of his dad. Bill wants to help, but he's afraid. Afraid that if he speaks up, Felix will come for him or his family. But he also wants justice for his mother. And then Bill reveals something that confirms Mary Rose's worst fears. When he was 8 years old, just before he ran to the police for help, he overheard a conversation between Sharon and Felix. Audio from Bill's recorded testimony plays. Sharon was asking Felix about his first wife, Mary, how she died, and Felix's response chilled Bill to his core. He told Sharon exactly how he killed his first wife. 3 months after Felix and Sharon were arrested for child endangerment, they were released. Bill was adopted by his grandparents, but he lived in constant fear that Felix would return. 5 years later, Felix did return, claiming he just wanted to see his son. But Sharon wasn't with him. More audio from Bill's testimony. Felix told Bill that Sharon got what she deserved, and warned his own son that if he ever told anyone, he would get the same. Bill lived with this secret for decades, terrified, silent, but when Mary Rose came to him, he saw a chance. Not just for Annette, not just for Sharon, but for his own mother, Mary Horton. In 2009, Bill died of cancer, but before he passed, he made sure his local preacher recorded his full testimony. The audio you've been hearing, that's from mere months before Bill's death. He wanted the truth to come out here for the victims. He knew what he had heard, and he never wavered on that, never. Mary Rose finally has what she believes is a real case. Testimonies from the Hortons, the Hensleys, Felix's own son, and herself. She believes this is enough to convince the FBI to reopen the cases. And for a moment, it works. They had a special agent there that was working on serial killers and cold cases. He told me, "I believe you're absolutely right. We are dealing with a serial killer." Mary Rose can barely believe it. After years of being ignored, dismissed, and turned away, someone finally believes her. But when the time comes for the formal meeting with the FBI, she receives devastating news. The agent has been let go due to budget cuts. The entire cold case department has been affected. Nobody follows up. Nobody calls her back. She's back at square one. I felt shame that I had gotten all the families excited about this, so it was a big letdown for me. Most people would have given up. After decades of dead ends, false hope, and institutional failure, most people would have walked away. But Mary Rose isn't most people. She continued to search for someone to take a look at our situation. She just had that burning desire to want to get this guy so bad. She was consumed with it. Almost 30 years without Annette. Almost 30 years of searching, investigating, and fighting. And then, in June 2011, Mary Rose is sitting in her living room listening to the radio when she hears about an investigative reporter who solved the notorious Mississippi burning murders. 8 murder cases perpetrated by the Ku Klux Klan, cold for almost 50 years. I was just sitting in my living room, listening, and I realized, oh my gosh, this man is not afraid of cold cases. I need to contact him. His name is Jerry Mitchell. Mary Rose calls Jerry Mitchell and gets straight to the point. Jerry, if you knew there was a serial killer living in Mississippi as a free man, would you be interested in the case? Well, yeah, Jerry responds, and that's when Mary tells him about Felix Vail. But Mary isn't just looking for someone to write about the case. She's learned that Felix has moved back to Mississippi, and she has a plan. I'm coming down to confront Felix, she tells Jerry. Jerry's response surprises her. Well, I want to go with you. They drive to a remote, isolated trailer park. Next to the blackened remains of an old burned-down house. Felix is home. Jerry is starting to get nervous. By now, I'm starting to get kinda suspicious about where is he watching? I'm thinking along those lines. But Mary Rose, she's 64 years old and she's done being afraid. She walks up to the house. The back window is missing, and she crawls inside. You don't worry about the risks. I don't worry about the risk. I just wanted to know the truth. Inside, Mary Rose finds religious texts from the Holy Order of Mons. And weapons. Lots of weapons. And she threw out a machete, and then she threw out another machete, then another machete, then another machete. And I'm like, what in the world have I gotten myself into? Mary crawls back out, and that's when they notice someone running toward them. It's not Felix. It's one of his sisters, Kay Faulkner, who lives in an adjacent house on the property. She's initially angry about the intrusion, but when they explain why they're there, her face changes. When I spoke to Kay Faulkner, Felix Vail's sister, she's like, oh, yeah, I think he killed these women. Even Felix's own family believes he's a killer. Jerry Mitchell doesn't waste time. He interviews everyone involved. He listens to Bill's tape. And then he writes. 4 years later, in 2015, Jerry Mitchell's book, Gone, is published. It tells the full story of Mary Rose's investigation and Felix Vail's decades-long killing spree. The book receives critical acclaim, wins multiple awards, and more importantly, it creates buzz. The FBI reopens the cases. I celebrated. I danced. I remember calling one of my brothers. I said, "Fred, I've got some good news." They said, "Mary, that's not good news. That's fabulous news. But there's a problem. Mary Horton Vail's case is the only one they can prosecute. It's the only case with a confirmed death, and since it was ruled accidental, police never collected proper evidence. After 50 years, most evidence and witnesses are lost to time. The FBI needs to find a district attorney willing to take on this seemingly impossible case. Enter Sam Holland, a prosecutor in Louisiana. I was minding my own business, walking down the hall to get some coffee, and the DA grabbed me and said, "Hey, how would you like to work on a 50-year-old murder case?" And foolishly, I told him I would do it. Holland sends officers to search Felix's property. They find personal journals spanning from the 1980s to 2010. Almost 2,500 pages. Felix clearly tried to control every woman in his life, and a lot of times through physical violence. There's even a section where Felix describes drinking raw blood, but nothing directly admitting to murder. Holland needs a witness, someone who was there when Mary Horton's body was recovered in 1962. Against all odds, he finds one, 90-year-old Ike Abshire. Ike was Felix's roommate back in Lake Charles. Ike's father owned a large boat and was hired as part of the search party. Ike happened to be on his father's boat when they found Mary's body. Holland and his team visit Ike's home. They're greeted by an elderly man in a wheelchair, surrounded by cardboard boxes with dates written on them. He says, "I got something for you." He gives us an envelope, and written on the envelope is a single word, KEEP, K-E-E-P. Inside the envelope are photographs, the lost pictures of Mary Horton's body. Back at the office, Holland's team is examining the photos when a forensic pathologist happens to walk by. He glances at the pictures and immediately asks, "Who murdered her?" They have their murder case. Felix Vail is arrested and charged with the murder of Mary Horton Vail. He's extradited to Louisiana for trial. When reporters approach him with questions, Felix remains silent. "Felix, what happened to Mary? What about Sharon, Annette? Felix, did you murder those women?" No response. The trial opens with testimony from Jerry Mitchell and Mary Rose, followed by Will Horton and Brian Hensley. But the key testimony comes from 90-year-old Ike Abshire. Ike describes the night they recovered Mary's body from the river. He describes the scarf around her mouth, the wound on her head, and then he says something crucial about the knot. It looked like a big old knot, but it wasn't a woman's knot. Without him, without his testimony introducing the photos, I can't prove it's a murder. Ike Abshire was the key to the entire case. 3 months after his testimony, Ike Abshire dies of old age. But his truth lives on. In 2016, after only 10 minutes of deliberation, the jury returns with their verdict: guilty. Felix Vail is convicted of Mary Horton's murder and sentenced to life in prison. Mary was sitting next to me, and Brian was sitting next to Mary, and we were holding hands. We'd become a family. The best part of this whole ordeal was getting to meet Mary Rose and getting to meet Will. And when they said, guilty, really, no words to describe it. It just felt so good. Finally, mission accomplished. The cases of Sharon Hensley and Annette Craver were never prosecuted. There were no bodies, no physical evidence, but in the eyes of Mary Rose, justice was served. The most important thing for me was that he would be convicted of murder, whether it was just for Mary Horton or all three women, and that he would serve the rest of his life in prison. This was it. He was never gonna get out of jail. Brian Hensley finally had closure for Sharon. I was able to have a memorial service for my sister, and it felt so good. I felt like I fulfilled a promise to my mom. But for Mary Rose, the word closure doesn't quite fit. I don't really know exactly what closure means. I haven't found Annette's body. There's always gonna be a piece of me that my heart is always gonna be broken. After the trial, Mary Rose began writing letters to Annette. In them, she talks to her daughter as if she's still there. She tries to forgive herself for the decisions she made all those years ago. The decision to leave Annette in Houston. The decision to approve the marriage to Felix. She writes to cope, to heal, to keep Annette's memory alive. Felix Vail is now in his 80s, serving a life sentence in Louisiana. He has never revealed what happened to Sharon Hensley or Annette Craver. He has never shown remorse. But Mary Rose's 3-decade investigation accomplished what law enforcement couldn't. It exposed a serial killer who had been hiding in plain sight for over 50 years. And here's the question that still haunts everyone involved. Where are Sharon and Annette? Felix knows, but he'll never tell. If this story left you stunned, there's another one on your screen right now that I think you need to watch. I believe it was made for you.